Welcome to today's PLC topic. I'm Jessica Booth. I'm the Fine Arts Program Manager here at the Department of Education. And I'm so proud of the work that our PLC leaders have done. You're going to see from our elementary school, middle school, and high school 2D and 3D professional learning community leads. If you are an elementary school teacher, you are already familiar with Mary Mullins, and if you are middle school, you are already familiar with Alicia Montgomery, and if you are a high school teacher, you are probably familiar with our power team of Sahira Dean and Heather Meyer. These four ladies are going to talk about how they promote their programs and how important it is for recruitment at the high school level, but really for support at the elementary and middle school level. They're also going to talk a little bit about vertical teaming and how they use that to promote their programs as well by reaching up to middle school or down to elementary school or down to middle school if you're a high school teacher. So I hope that you enjoy this program. You will learn a little bit from each of them, regardless of your own grade level affiliation. And we're really proud of everything you're doing here at the DOE, and we just want to support you in any way that we can. Thank you.
My name is Mary Mullins, and I'm the Elementary Art PLC moderator. I personally don't have to recruit for my program since my entire school attends art, but I do promote for it and believe it's essential for any level that you teach. I have found a great way to promote, reach students, their families, as well as the community at large is by adopting social media in your classroom. No matter what age or grade level you teach, it is important to have support from your families. Social media is here to stay, and the majority of our families are on some form of it. With so many options, you first need to decide which one's best for you. I have my Twitter set up for professional posts only, and my Facebook is my personal page, but I occasionally post things there to raise awareness in my community of things I may be doing with my students. There's a very good chance that your school already has its own social media page that you can use to show off art that your students are creating or events that you're sponsoring. Social media is free, easy to use. You can post from the comfort of your own home, and it potentially reaches many, many people. Consider using a hashtag when posting that's easy to remember and directly relates to your program. Hashtags make it convenient to go back and see what you've posted. It puts things in sort of an album. Don't forget when you're posting to also use the hashtag ArtsEdGA so we can all see the great things you're doing. The purpose of vertical teaming is to increase communication across grade levels so we can collaboratively identify expectations at each grade level and support one another in meeting them. Vertical teaming decreases the isolation of teachers, evens out expectations, and creates an efficient program that allows more students to practice higher level thinking skills. In order to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our students and helping them progress, I collaborate with a middle school art teacher. The goal is for our students to have a smooth transition. We discuss projects and skills in order for our students to not have repeat lessons. She tells me about things I might need to focus on my lessons so they are fully prepared for her class. It's also important for us to have common art vocabulary that we both use. Consider establishing a vertical art show with your feeder schools, ranging from kindergarten through high school. I started doing this a few years ago. The idea is for students and our community to see what we're doing creatively in our schools and the progression of art by grade levels. In my feeder art show, I invite local professional artists to display their work as well as speak to students about careers in art. This is a great way for our schools to collaborate vertically as well as bring awareness to our programs. It's truly a hit that our community looks forward to. Do you use interdisciplinary lessons? The more connections that a student makes, the better they are able to learn and retain information. Cross-curricular teaching helps students make more connections and gives more meaning and relevance to the subjects and skills they are learning across the board. I truly enjoy incorporating other subjects when I teach my art lessons, and honestly, it doesn't take much research to do this. With art, it seems to actually happen organically. I try to include science, history, math, writing, and even life skills. A great way to do this is to ask teachers at your school for a list of the topics they are planning to cover. Then plan art projects to align with the classroom lessons. It does not always work out or even align with my standards, but I do like to try for those connections whenever possible. Not only does this reinforce student learning in all areas, but you have the added gain of respect from your colleagues.
Hi, I'm Alicia Montgomery, and I'm the virtual middle school PLC lead for visual arts. We don't do a lot of recruiting in our district that I'm in because most of our students don't have elementary school art. So when they get to me, this will be the first time that they've had art. And we have what we call a rotation. So they rotate between me and ag and technology and a couple of other classes to kind of get a taste of what it is that they think they want to do as they get older and move on to our junior high school. We do a lot of promoting though for our program at our school. We've participated in different contests and art exhibits. We do an art exhibit at the local art center each year for the Youth Art Month exhibit. We hang artwork at the hospital that we rotate out through the Women's Junior Service League. We hang artwork in local businesses by working through the Chamber of Commerce. We participate in different festivals and have a little booth that has our artwork in it to showcase our students' work. We put their artwork on our school website. It's also in the yearbook for our school. We do lots of different things through that. And then we also have a news team that comes in, and we usually have them interview one of our artists and show their artwork and kind of what they're working on at the time. I use interdisciplinary lessons in almost all of my projects. For example, when we're talking about color theory, we talk about how light waves travel and how light looks through a prism. We talk about how we mix the colors together. And so not only are they learning or reinforcing what they're learning in their science classes, it also goes into like the home ec class because they talk about color theory there as well. And they create a color wheel. So it helps us to reinforce the things that we're learning in our classrooms, but also it helps reinforce the things that they're learning in their academic classes. And this also gives me a little bit more credence with our academic teachers because they see that what we're doing is helping reinforce what they're teaching in their classes as well. Another thing that we do is when we do art critiques or we fill out a rubric, we talk about using complete sentences and not using emojis or LOLs and things like that in their answers. So we want to talk about using a capital letter at the beginning and using the correct punctuation at the end, making sure that you have subject verb agreement. So we talk about those things as we're filling out our rubrics and they're critiquing each other's artwork and they're critiquing their own artwork. And it's just a few sentences. They're usually very short, maybe a short paragraph about somebody else's artwork, either a professional painter or drawer or sculptor's artwork or one of their peers, just kind of giving them some feedback and some ideas. And that really helps enforce what they're learning in their language arts class as well. Another thing that we work with is tessellations. And so with tessellations, we work with the math teachers and we talk about rotation and reflection and those different terms that they're using in math as well. And I found that some of the math teachers are taking my lesson and working with it in their classroom as well. So it helps us give the teachers ideas too of ways that they can incorporate what we do into their classroom and reinforce what we're learning as well, instead of us just helping them. So that's been a nice evolution of this interdisciplinary learning. With vertical teaming, that doesn't really start with us until my students get to middle school with me. So we're kind of the bottom of the vertical teaming ladder. So we don't see a lot of the benefits from it in our school, but we have a lot of benefits that follow them throughout their educational career while they're in our school system. Most of our students don't have art in elementary school, so they're getting it the first time from me. And so I work with the teacher from the junior high and the teacher from the high school where we are, and we talk a lot about the projects that we do to make sure that we don't duplicate those projects. And we also talk about the things that we are doing and the techniques that we're using, so that way we can build on those as they grow up. So one of the examples that we really focused on and have really worked to vertical team is working with linear perspective. So with my sixth graders, we talk about linear perspective and we do a project that's called Flying Boxes, where they just draw different boxes using 1 point linear perspective. And then as seventh graders, we introduce things like the horizon line and shading, and we start creating either a cityscape or a bedroom design where they get to draw and design the inside of their bedroom. When they get to the junior high, then they're working with 2 point linear perspective. And so they can create either an interior or an exterior drawing, working with, again, with value and shading. And they get into a little more shading with color and using the different values of color to create the shadows and lights and darks in those drawings. And then by the time they get to high school, they have a good grip on those things and they can start working more into the details and talking about 3 point linear perspective. So we start off with those basics and then build through there. Another thing that we do is, like, through our ceramics program, I'll teach the basics like scoring and slipping, just very basic slab hand building methods. And then they build on that when they get to the junior high, and then they build on it some more when they get into the actual ceramics only class, the ceramics focused class at the high school. So vertical teaming helps us to build those techniques and the skills and those different things that are in our Georgia Standards of Excellence. But they also help us to make sure that we're not duplicating things. And it helps us to talk about that as a team so that we can work through things like making sure we're using the same terminology. Like, I found that I use the word intermediate colors and they may use the word tertiary colors. Just making sure that we're using the same terminology throughout so that it helps our students to learn more and to be more productive each year as they grow as young artists.
Hello, and welcome to Godot Community Visual Art for 3D. I want to talk about recruiting and promoting for our programs. I think that we are in a unique position in the arts where sometimes it's required that we not only advocate for ourselves, but we actually have to actively recruit students. And so I was thinking about how I go about doing that, and I realized that I really approach it, it's sort of a three-prong approach. There is the recruiting that I'm doing in my classroom, which may seem redundant because you're already there, they're already there, you already have the bodies. The recruiting that I'm doing in my school, and then the recruiting that I'm doing in the community outside of my school. And a lot of it is really just about creating awareness. So I think that in an ideal world, we all feel like students want to be in our classrooms, like they are choosing to be in our classrooms. But I know, especially at the high school level, sometimes we can be a place where students get placed when there just isn't anywhere else to place them, or the student hasn't selected their electives. So, they just get put in an art class, maybe with very little or no interest at all in the arts. So I think just starting from that point, it is our job to engage those students, to foster this appreciation and knowledge about the arts so that they may go from being someone who was ambivalent or apathetic about being in our classrooms to students who want to go on and continue on art pathways. I think also we have to understand that the students that are in our classes are our biggest advocates. They are the ones that are going out into the school community and talking to their peers and classmates and telling them, we did this really great project in Miss So-and-so's class, and we got to use power tools, and we got to, set stuff on fire within reason, and safety first. And, those are your mouthpieces, those kids that are going and spreading the word, because it's impossible for us to reach all of those kids. I think also keeping the content fresh and timely and challenging, and, do we have to do this again? Isn't something that you want to hear in your art classes. So think about how you are keeping the students that you have interested from level 1 to level 2 and so on. It's also really important to form connections with your students so that they feel like they have a place in the arts. I don't think any of us feel like we need to be bringing the next generation of Barbara Hepworths into the world. I mean, if you can, that's wonderful. But we want students to understand that we want them to be risk takers, but it's also a safe environment. And anyone and everyone can and should participate. I so badly wanted to take photography when I was in middle school, and I didn't. And it was, despite my young appearance, it was darkroom photography. Way before digital cameras. And I couldn't take the class, or I didn't feel like I could take the class because I could not afford my own 35 millimeter camera. And that was something that prevented me from feeling like I had a place in that classroom. So making sure that there is accessibility. So beyond the classroom and into your school community, I would strongly urge you to collaborate with other disciplines, whether it still be in the arts. So, collaborating somehow with your performing arts, or other disciplines that maybe aren't so obvious, your math classes, your lit classes, and show students that may not be aware of what is offered in your school, what you are doing. So doing a raku firing with kids from a chemistry class who made simple pinch pots could be really exciting. Make sure that you're displaying work throughout the school. Again, generating interest and giving students and other people who are coming through that building on a day-to-day basis a knowledge of what it is that you're producing in your classrooms. A lot of times our admin and counselors and other teachers, for that matter, don't know what we're doing in our rooms. Unfortunately, sometimes they think it's just craft time and the kids come in and they just pick up whatever media that they feel like using that day and having at it. But, it's important that they understand that we are a standards-driven course, that we have rigor and we have high expectations for our students. And so having them come into your rooms and see what your students are working on just gives them that much more knowledge, so that when a student goes to register for courses and they are uncertain, and the counselor may ask them what their interest is, and they say, I like to build things, then maybe instead of taking some engineer course, they might take a sculpture course instead. Also make sure that counselors, parents, and your students are aware of pathways and the Fine Art Diploma Seal. Those are, obviously the pathway is and Diploma Seal indicate career preparedness in the arts. And I think particularly here in Georgia, there are opportunities, post-secondary opportunities for students in the arts. So the Fine Art Diploma Seal is a really wonderful badge to have to show your interest and commitment, the student's interest and commitment to the arts. And again, going back to a lot of times counselors and admin don't really understand what we do in our classroom. I've had opportunity to provide professional development during like a teacher in service day, or sometimes we have content specific days in our county. So providing maybe a professional development opportunity where you present them with an art project that somehow relates to another discipline. So, pinch pots and, history, or, I reference Roberto Lugo all the time, but looking at, the century vase that I had mentioned in a previous webinar, and then comparing it to Roberto Lugo's trials and trails piece. So, showing how the arts are also supporting other content areas. In the community as a whole, so you've got your microcosm as your little classroom, then you've got your school, but then you've got outside of the school. And, recruiting in that way often necessitates working with your feeder schools. So going into those middle school classrooms and, maybe sending students. I've had students from our National Art Honor Society go be a teacher's aide for a day, and, they get a lot of one-on-one talking time. Again, this is where the students that are in your classroom become your biggest advocates, and they can answer questions about what we're doing in the classroom. Utilizing open house and curriculum night to highlight those post-secondary options in the arts. Have working artists and art-related professionals come into your classroom so that students can see that, yes, there is life in the arts after high school. Utilizing your social media, so creating quality publications, so online catalogs that give a really nice, thorough outline of what your classes are all about. So, again, creating information and awareness so that students understand what is available to them. Websites and online catalogs are really just a great reference for both students and their parents. And, obviously technology is playing a part in creating awareness for our programs. So those are the ways that I recruit and promote my program. Vertical teaming is so beneficial in so many ways. First of all, I think that it's good just to have relationships with the teachers that are teaching the students who eventually will be in your classroom. So for me as a high school teacher, it's valuable for me to know the teacher that's teaching the feeder school, the middle school, and then, even down to the elementary level. Vertical teaming ensures kind of that everyone's on the same page. I had spoken about keeping material fresh and timely. And I think that, one risk that we have of teaching is that we teach repeater activities. And so if I know what the teacher in the middle school and the teacher in the elementary school taught, if I know what those lessons were, then I will know, hey, maybe we shouldn't make a Day of the Dead, I guess, skull, if that's what they did in the middle school. I do make a Day of the Dead skull because they don't make it in the middle school, but that's what came to mind. I think that keeping your content fresh and exciting is really important. Also, through vertical teaming, you really learn your standards. I think that we all sort of just get locked into the standards that we teach. Like, how many times have you gone to another grade level and looked at their standards? So you really get an understanding of, oh, this is what the benchmark is for third grade. Okay, well, then that makes sense. And then this is what the benchmark is for seventh grade. All right, I understand that. How do I build off of those benchmarks from what I'm teaching? It makes sure that students are utilizing sequential skill building and utilizing that previous knowledge. it can really be a time saver, honestly. We all know that review is an important part of the process, and sometimes, you know, kids don't retain information as much as we would like them to. But I think, you know, big picture, it's a really great way to be able to move on and not wonder if this was covered or this was covered, and you can reference previous projects. I think that that's true not only from one grade level to the next, but in my situation in high school, I think it's really valuable that I'm teaching. Not only am I teaching the 3D courses, but I'm also teaching the intro courses. And in my particular situation, we have 3 art teachers, and all 3 of us teach the intro courses. And that's really important because I know that when I have students that take ceramics, that I can reference what they did in intro, and, you know, and say, do you remember when you made your mug, and how you the construction technique was called what? And they should be able to reference that. So even vertical teaming, especially I think if you are not in a situation where you are teaching the intro courses and you are getting crops of students who did not have you, that knowing what they specifically did and being able to reference that is a really great way to help them make those connections. So I think that using interdisciplinary lessons to help your program can be looked at. Again, I had mentioned earlier with recruiting, I think it helps when you are using interdisciplinary lessons to spread awareness of your program if you are working directly with another teacher who teaches a different discipline. Also, I think if you're just doing it within your classroom, it allows students to gain a greater understanding of the world by making connections through the arts. I so many times mention to students that often ceramics are the only record we have of past civilizations because of its durability, of course, and how art is often the record keeper of history. And so they can make those connections. They can understand what technology was thousands of years ago and how you could tell the advancement of a civilization. You know, we talk about why civilizations were making things, and the, you know, approaching that difference between art and artifact. And I think that that's really valuable because they can see that applied knowledge from other disciplines and how they are using it. Math as well. I think we use a lot of math in making plans for our forms. We talk about math in terms of proportion of forms. And I think that students don't readily connect math with art or history with art. I think history is an easier connection. Social studies is an easier connection. But showing that, you know, direct link between the two is really important. And so I think interdisciplinary connections are valuable. I like to use music, not so much as maybe the connection between making something based on a song or anything like that, but how music affects mood and how your mood affects your process. And often that comes out in how the work looks. There's a really wonderful Korean potter, an ongi master. An ongi is a kimchi jar, those huge kimchi jars. And there's a wonderful documentary on YouTube. His name is uh, Lee Kang Hyo, KANG-HYO. And there is about a 6-minute segment at the end of this documentary where he is listening to this wonderful Korean drum music and is glazing this almost larger than life kimchi vessel, and the interconnectedness and the music and the way that he is responding to the music as he glazes is just a wonderful way to show, I feel like, that connection between all things and the arts.
Hi, welcome to the Godot community. My name is Sahira Dean. I am your virtual PLC for high school 2D art. Tonight's topics will be recruiting, vertical teaming, contest, and student opportunities. So I think the biggest and most important thing about recruiting and promoting is actually taking pictures and spreading the word and the images, of course, about what you're doing in your classroom, what your students are doing in your classroom. So sharing with middle school teachers so they can share with their students and their parents. When you tag or tweet out images or post them on Instagram, tag your principal, tag the middle school principal, tag the, just community members, because that's a big part of just spreading the word and allowing people to see what's inside your classroom. A lot of times the art classrooms are kind of tucked away, like at my current school, we're downstairs and it's just the art department down there essentially. So, if I'm not we don't get a lot of traffic from students that are not in the art classes. So a lot of that is, putting work on display or allowing people to see. A lot of allowing people to see what goes on in your classroom is putting work on display in main hallways and definitely using your social media platform. Another thing is allowing students to be more visible. So a lot of times, art students are going to be, they'll be friends. They would have known each other from middle school, elementary school, if they went to the same school. But, they connect pretty easily through their talent, which is art. So they stick together. Sometimes they don't spend a lot of time, or a lot of them are not, in the, the science or the math clique, so to speak. So allowing them to be more visible outside of the classroom is a big part of promoting and recruiting for your program, because students, will see them engaged in doing these different things. So here we are painting the rebranding the stadium at one of my old schools, or one of my former schools. So of course, we would leave before class started. They would have aprons, they might hear us. We had a cart, which would make a lot of noise, so the cart going down the hallway, would attract a lot of attention. And, they would see us out painting on the football field. So a lot of students gain a little bit of notoriety, from rebranding or this rebranding act. And of course, again, taking pictures, sharing it on social media platforms, tagging as many people as you can is a great way to promote and recruit for your program. Another thing is doing murals in school. And a lot of times, you get, as an art teacher, you get a lot of requests from different teachers and from your principal, so definitely don't wear yourself thin by saying yes to everything. And then also allow yourself to do some things that you want to do, right? So one initiative that we had one year was to do some different murals. So this is the students during school time actively engaged in painting the murals. So we took about a good 2 weeks to do this, and we made it curriculum related. So it definitely tied into the curriculum. But, during class changes, because this was actually one class or we did the class that I took was during lunchtime, so they would get a lot of that lunchroom traffic, like people going to and from lunch. What class are y'all in? Other students stopping and just watching, taking pictures and selfies with the murals. Always a good thing because they will take pictures and promote it on their social media. So another awesome thing is to, be again visible during some of those high traffic times during the school day, because a lot of times students seeing that might go to their counselor and ask to take that class next year. One other thing is branding. So a few years we started doing our own art shows. A few consecutive years, we started creating art shirts that went with the different art shows that we did. So for this particular show, the idea was to do a reverse tie-dye. So we did that during the school day. Some students came in the morning, or if they finished their project early, they were allowed time to work on their reverse tie-dye. So we allowed them to hang in the classroom. Of course, I'm taking pictures, tweeting them out. And then they wore them, leading up to the art show. So, they got a lot of attention just based on, oh, who made that shirt? Or I saw such and such with a shirt like that. So the conversations come up with, I did it. I'm a part of this art program, or I'm in this art class. So a lot of the recruiting, if you do it cleverly enough, your students will do a lot of the recruiting and promoting for you because of course they're proud of, what they've done, and they want to kind of brag a little bit. Another thing is setting up during lunchtime. So the homecoming week for high school is an awesome opportunity to promote and recruit and be visible. So in the lunchroom, one day during homecoming week, we had a photo booth, so students made their props, and it was a fundraiser, but it was also just a way for the students to be more visible outside of the classroom. And of course, those conversations came up about, what class you're in, how'd y'all get to do this, that kind of thing. So again, as a teacher, take as many pictures as you can and promote those through your social media platforms. Field trips are actually another way to recruit and promote. Sometimes students just want a day out the building. So a lot of times, some students would take those art classes because, we were active, going on field trips, doing art shows, painting different murals and things like that. Students want to be engaged and immersed in school in a variety of different ways. Not everybody's an athlete, not everybody is, wanting to, cheerlead or whatever. So getting students engaged through art opportunities is another way to cleverly promote and recruit for your program, just because the word gets out about, the art class is doing this, or the art teacher's doing this, and students want to be involved a lot of times. And this is another field trip that we went on to the Emory Museum, and then to an artist studio, and then to another gallery at the bottom. But again, just getting students out the building, they go back and share and tell their friends, the word just kind of spreads to different people about just the awesome things going on in class and outside of class. So in terms of vertical teaming, not all meetings have to be boring. So I think one cool way to get more teacher participation is to, especially with art teachers, is to allow the meetings to be hands-on, and sometimes meet at a restaurant just to, kind of talk and share and swap ideas. So getting creative about the types of meetings that you have, so it's not just all like data driven all the time. Is a great opportunity to vertical team with not only middle school teachers, but just it could be elementary, middle school, high, but really getting to know the team, especially the students that will come to you as a high school teacher. So getting to know the team of teachers that help to create and nurture that students before you got to meet them is definitely important. Being on the same page in terms of language and verbiage is definitely important as well. So vertical teaming is definitely an important part of teaching. So recruiting, contests, and promoting, that kind of all goes hand in hand sometimes. So of course, making art visible, making students visible, allowing them to spread the words and kind of brag about what they're doing and what's coming up. But of course, contests, when students win a contest, just the stars that light up in their eyes is, it's like nothing kind of beats that sometimes. So getting students to, or allowing students to participate in contests, and then allowing them to see that, see their competition a lot of times promotes them, or a lot of times allowing students to see their competition. It sometimes, it forces them to, I need to practice, or I need to bring my sketchbook home. So contests, if used creatively and, with no pressure, can be a great reward and payoff for your program and definitely for the student. And of course, when they win, bragging rights all around for the student, for the program, for the principal, and things like that. So finding out about different opportunities is definitely a rewarding factor for your program. And then when you're having art shows, of course, making sure there's a flyer visible so that, students, administration, parents coming into the building can have the opportunity to come and see the work and meet the artists. So it all kind of just plays hand in hand. When you have art shows, I think food is a really cool reward, so to speak, to have for not only the participating artists, but for, visitors that come. It's just something about food that just, it gives it a homey, kind of a family vibe. So it just makes it more inviting. So if possible, try to have some type of hors d'oeuvre or food at the art show. It also makes the students feel really special because they'll recall those memories from high school. Oh, we used to, have art shows every month. We always had food, or, memories are created, I feel, around the kitchen table, so to speak. So art shows, making them as nice as possible, whether it's music or things like that, is definitely a way for, definitely a way to recruit and promote your program as well. So I thank you so much for listening. Again, my name is Sahira Dean. I'll see you in the next webinar.